here to sugarcoat life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, you, me, and you. Let's keep it real honest.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Real Honest, the podcast where I share candid thoughts and feelings about life, love, and relationships, God and church, adulting, the workplace, and everything in between. I'm your host, Samantha Labatt, and you may not always like me, but I'll always be honest with you. There was no episode last week because I lost my voice at Disney. So, hi, I'm back today, and hopping in with what I'm learning from God right now. Interestingly, I think it is a reiteration of the phrase, people come into your life, for seasons, or for a reason. And just kind of the difference between those and being able to identify them. I'm just seeing that come up a lot in terms of like conversations that I'm having with people, things that I'm seeing when scrolling through social media. Like, these are just recurring themes that I'm seeing pop up a lot. That's just like, let God remove people. And I have kind of been having a hard time with it because I feel like I've lost a lot of friends recently. And I struggle with like, how do I know when God is removing someone or when I just need to try harder? I feel like with romantic relationships, it's a lot easier to identify because I am like chasing the red flag and God is very clearly like, hey, stop. Please move in the opposite direction. Like, turn around. I'm over here. What are you doing? And I'm just blatantly ignoring him because I'm at the carnival where the red flags are. But with friends, a lot of times it can be difficult because the end of some friendships feels like a breakup, and it really is something that you need to mourn. But then the end of some friendships just kind of feels like, where like you don't really care. There's more of an indifference there. And indifference feels mean to me for some reason. Like I feel like if I am upset about something, that means that there was depth to the relationship, right? Like, if a random stranger off the street walks up to me and tells me that I'm ugly, like, it's not going to feel great, but I'm also going to be like, who even are you? If my best friend walks up to me and tells me that I'm ugly and means it, like, that's really going to hurt my feelings. So I feel like if a friendship is fading away or whatever, and I don't care, like, I'm not interested in saving it, and I'm not interested in blowing it up and burning the bridge forever, like in either direction, then that makes me feel like we really were never friends to begin with. And I question the whole thing. And I'm like, this whole thing was a waste of time. And that just makes me feel bad. So I think God is trying to bring me back from I have all or nothing thinking, as I've said probably every week. But bring me back from that, like, more to the middle ground, as my therapist always has to tell me, where like, maybe it's not that you're a terrible person. Maybe it's not that you were never friends, but maybe it's just that this friendship ran its course and now it's over, and that's okay. Like, that person was in your life for a season, and they didn't change your life in a way that you're terribly sad to let go of them. They also didn't like impact you in a way that like you're clinging for dear life because you need them, or that you have to run away from them. Like, maybe it's just like, hey, we met at a crossroads, we shook hands, we kept it moving, and like, that's totally okay. So I think the whole idea of having close friends that are only in your life for a reason or for a season, it's very confusing to me, because anytime that I call somebody my best friend, or like a very good friend, I expect them to be in my life forever. Like, I was very distraught when all my high school friends and I did not all end up in each other's weddings. Well, I'm not married, but I didn't end up in any of their weddings, and none of them speaks to me anymore. And I was just very like very, very distraught and confused by it, because I was like, we're best friends. Like, what are you talking about? And they were like, we were just best friends for high school. Like, what are you talking about? And so I feel like that is something where I kind of feel like if I have a classmate that I never get close with, or a coworker that I never get close with, I don't have a problem being like, all right, that person was just in my life for the season of that class or the season of that job. And now it's over, and like, whatever, keep it moving. But if I like spent time with them and I invested in them and they invested in me the way that I would in a romantic relationship, I'm like, wait a minute, where's this going? No, bring it back. I have to keep it. And so just back on the note of me wondering, like, okay, well, when do I know when I'm just supposed to try harder? Like, is God removing this person, or is God like just giving me a challenge and like, hey, just step up, like make another phone call, send another text? And I think that it has to do with the fruits of our labor, where I do want to caveat this and make sure that I'm clear to say, like, we don't always get to see the fruits of our labor, right? I mean, if you ran into a random stranger that's about to harm themselves and you smile at them and that's all they needed, and it turns their day around and they don't go do the thing they were about to do, you may not know each other. They may never contact you to say like, hey, this was going to happen and you smiled at me and it changed my life and I just wanted to thank you. Like, that might never happen. So you may never know that you have impacted somebody in that way. But I think that sometimes you do get to see the fruits of your labor. And I think it's the same way in like when a romantic relationship isn't working, but you've tried everything. Like, you've done the therapy, you have set boundaries, you've communicated your needs, and they're just not receptive to it. And you guys are just not on the same page. And then finally you get, or you're like, I love you. Like, I love you enough for both of us. And they're like, but I don't love you. Like, at the end of the day, you can't make them love you. Like, honestly, friends work the same way. So I feel like if you and your friend are constantly having miscommunications, and if you guys have the ability to sit down and talk about it, and there is learning from it, to where, you're saying like, all right, I said this and you heard this. So what words could I have used that would have helped you hear what I was actually trying to say? And if you guys can get through that, and then it makes sense to both of you, and then the next time you try to communicate that thing, you use the words that allows your friend to hear it the way that it's meant to be heard, great. But if you guys keep trying to explain it to each other and you're still missing it and it's not working and it's just constant miscommunication, or it's that you are either feeling like bad every time that you talk or every time you spend together, or you're feeling nothing, then I think that's like, all right, you're laboring and it's not bearing any fruit. And like, maybe that's a hint that it's time to let it go. The other thing is that I don't think there always needs to be a conversation. I think that this is something that should be gauged based on the friendship itself. Like, take into account how long you've been friends, like what's your degree of closeness? How do you feel about the friendship? How do they feel about the friendship? Like, and also know that you're probably not going to be on the same page. I have friends in the past that have ghosted me and probably thought that they were extremely clear about what they wanted, and I wasn't receptive to it, or I didn't understand, or whatever it was. So they were like, fuck it, I'm just not responding to you anymore. I have ghosted people. I ghost people for one of two reasons. I either ghost them because I have tried to have a conversation. I've tried to be very, very direct and say like, this is not working. I don't want to do this anymore. And they have not been receptive to that. And they've just kept on like doing the same thing that I said wasn't working. I ghost people in that situation. Or I ghost people if I'm just done. Like if I get to the indifferent place where I am just like, I truly do not have the energy to put any more effort into this in either direction. Like, I'm not mad at you. I don't want to hurt you, but I also don't want to pursue this friendship, and I don't care either way to process through it. Like, I'm just done. Like, in those situations, I also ghost people. And I'm not saying that either of these situations are right or good. They're just differences that I personally have experienced. But I think that if you feel like the friendship warrants a conversation, if you feel like you need that, I think you should ask for it. And I think that if you feel like the other person deserves it or they need it and you're willing to give it to them, then I think that you should. I also think you should consider whether or not the conversation is going to do any good. So like one of my sisters, for example, recently broke up with a friend, and she kept it very short and sweet and just said like, hey, I think you and I are just in different places in life, like moving in different directions, and I'm not able to continue this friendship anymore. And the girl was like, I don't understand. Like, can I get more of an explanation? And my sister like was explaining to me, she's like, I just know, like, I know her very well. And I know that she's not going to understand. Like, no amount of explaining to her how I feel is going to make her understand. Like, she's repeatedly showed me time and time again, year after year, that she doesn't get me and she doesn't hear me when I talk. And so I feel like it's just going to drain me to try to explain to her, and she's still not going to get it. And she's going to be hurt either way, because either way, I'm not continuing the friendship. She's going to be hurt if I explain. She's going to be hurt if I don't. So at this point, like, I'm just prioritizing myself and my own mental health, and like, it's going to hurt me more if I try to explain. So I'm just not going to. And I respect that. Like, I think that works for her. Whether or not you think that's mean or you think that's terrible of her really is irrelevant, because this is all about each of us individually on our own journeys and what works for us. So in these past few weeks that we've been doing this friendship series, if you will, on being seen and known, a lot of you have reached out and asked, like, practically, how do I make my friends feel seen and heard and known? Like, how do I show my friend that I know them? Like, am I supposed to ask them like what I do that makes them feel known? Am I supposed to ask them what makes them feel known and then go out and do it? And I think this is a really good question. I honestly don't know how to answer it, so I'm going to process through it right now and see if I can come up with an answer for you by the end of this. This is really difficult for me. Like, so many of you have asked, and I've just been sitting here like, I don't know. And I think part of what makes it so difficult is I've come to the conclusion that I do not actively choose when and how to show somebody that I know them well. Like, I think it's just something that naturally happens over time, because I spend time with people and I pay attention and I notice things and I listen when they talk. And I just try to pick up on things. And I've kind of noticed that, like, that's what my friends who know me really well do with me as well. I think it always hurts when you think that somebody knows you very well, and then they say or do something that proves that they don't know you well. Like, I think that hurts. And I think that pain is a trigger for you to be aware of, like, maybe if your friend says something and it hurts your feelings and you know that they weren't intending to hurt your feelings, and it's maybe something that's kind of trivial that you feel like shouldn't hurt your feelings, and you're kind of like, why are my feelings hurt right now? maybe pause there and ask, like, is it because they don't know me? Like, is that what's hurting me? Is it the fact that I thought they knew me better? An example I'll give you of this is one of my best friends, maybe a year or two ago. I don't know how long it was now, but she said to me, fuck is your favorite word. And it just really bothered me. Like, I didn't get mad at her in the moment. It was just kind of like she said it and we moved on, but I could not stop thinking about it. And like, I ended up talking about it in therapy like multiple times that month because I could not stop thinking about it. And I like was getting angry and I was like, why am I so bothered by this? And just through processing it like on my own and with my therapist, I was like, it bothers me because it's not true. And I consider this girl to be one of my best friends. Like, I think that I know her fairly well, and I think that she knows me fairly well. So for her to make any statement about me that's not true, I'm like, like where's the disconnect here? And what's interesting to me is like people are going to have different definitions of what a lot is when it comes to cursing, right? Like, some of you listening to this like are going to agree with her and be like, oh yeah, fuck's totally your favorite word. You say it way too often. And whether you're in that camp or you're on the other side where you're like, I've never heard you curse, what are you talking about? Like, just pause right now and ask yourself, like, if somebody were to say to you, that person curses a lot, what does that mean to you? Because some people are thinking, okay, that person curses every other word. Some people are thinking that person curses every sentence. Some people hear somebody say one curse word one time and they're like, that person cusses like a sailor. So I think part of it just has to do with like, there's a disconnect between what I think cursing often is and what she thinks cursing often is. But either way, like, it's absolutely not a true statement that fuck is my favorite word. Like, I actually don't have a favorite word. I think I have a lot of favorite phrases. Like, I am a big fan of flaming intensity of 1,000 suns. I'm not even sure where I got that. I think it's from the Fairly Odd Parents. I'm like 90% sure it's from some Nickelodeon cartoon. If it's not the Fairly Odd Parents, another one. But either way, it's like, because she thinks, or I don't know if she still thinks, but because she thought that fuck was my favorite word, I was like, okay, it's clearly a word that I say too often around her to the point where she feels like I say it too much. And so what I started to do was I started to edit every single time I would speak to her. Like, anytime we're having a conversation, anytime I'm sending her a long voice note, like, I would be very, very careful about the placement of any curse word, like, not just fuck, but any, like, if I was cursing at all. And I would like plan my sentences ahead of time. Like, I would say it in my head and then say it out loud. And if there was a curse word in it, I would remove it. Whereas like when I'm talking to Cameron, for example, like, I have absolutely no filter. I don't edit anything because I don't have to worry about how my words will land with him, because he's never said anything to me about like, you do this too much or this not enough or this makes me uncomfortable. Like, he's just never said anything to me like that. So that just makes me feel really safe to like freely be myself and just say whatever I'm thinking and feeling, and know that it's not going to land in a way that I do not intend it to. And that is something that makes me feel really known. Like, Cameron knows that I exaggerate a lot when I talk. So like, if I'm telling a story about an old lady and I say that she's 100, if Cameron is next to me and I'm telling this story to like a group of people, he'll lean over to the other person and be like, she means 82, not 100. And to me, it's like, I'm just telling a story and exaggerating. Like, I'm not trying to lie, and I don't expect anyone who's listening to the story to actually believe that I spent time with somebody that's 100 years old. But people that don't know me well wouldn't know that. Like, and I noticed this when I was telling a story to a few girls in seminary recently. And I referenced college being like, 20 years ago. And I said it like that, like with the like exasperated, like, forever ago. And I was meaning like it feels like college was 20 years ago. But one of them was like, wait, didn't you just turn 31? Like, you're not 40. And I was like, oh my gosh, no. Like, I graduated college in 2015. Like, it was almost 10 years ago. And she's like, oh, okay. But it was like the fact, like, I appreciate that she paused and clarified because she hasn't known me very long. She's only heard me tell one or two stories. So she doesn't instinctually know that I exaggerate a lot and doesn't like she can't pick up on those things when I say stuff like that. So I have to be like more literal when I talk to her. And overall, I think I prefer my relationships where I don't have to edit anything. But again, like those come with time. Like no one's gonna know me right off the bat. With the friend who said that fuck is my favorite word, like I love her so much. Like I love her to death and she's amazing and she's one of my favorite people and I want her in my life absolutely forever. And so I think that like when she said that to me, I just felt like she had a negative opinion of me. Like she thinks that I curse too much and I want her to hold a higher opinion of me because I want her to love me as much as I love her. So I've started like actively working to achieve that higher view in her eyes, which I don't know that she has a negative opinion of me. I don't know that she thinks that people that curse a lot are bad. I don't know that she thinks that's a bad thing. I don't know that she meant anything negative by saying it. Like this is just what happened in my brain when she said it. So I think that's another thing that like my therapist always tells me like you want people to read your mind and that's not fair because people are not mind readers. And I totally agree with that. I agree that people are not mind readers and I agree that it's not fair to expect anyone to read your mind. However, I have encountered multiple people throughout my life who do read me very well. Like, case in point, Cameron, case in point, a couple of my friends that were on my birthday trip last week, case in point, man that I was in love with last summer, like, people that can just look at me and, if they're like, hey, how are you doing? And I say like, I'm fine. Like people that won't accept that will like stop and look me in the eye and be like, you're not fine. Like you're sad. What are you sad about? How can I help you? And that is my bread and butter. Like people that just can read me like a book. And the reality is you just can't do that with anyone. Like I don't know if that is something that can be learned over time with anyone. I can't do it with anyone. I can do it with very specific people. I have found very specific people can do it with me. So I think that if that's something you desire, I don't know that it would be helpful or practical or useful or if it's even possible to like sit somebody down and say like, hey, I would really like for you to be able to read me like a book. Like, please study my emotions and my thoughts and feelings so you could figure it out. Like, I don't think that's a thing, which kind of just goes back to me like not knowing how to answer this question of like, how do you like practically make somebody feel seen and known? I really think that you have to just spend time with them. I think a lot of this is unintentional. I think a lot of it just happens. Like I've talked a lot before about safe people, and every time I mention Cameron now, I feel like I have to give a disclaimer that like I do not think that he is perfect. I know he's not Jesus and doesn't walk on water. He's just like my oldest friend, so I'm gonna have the most examples from him. But like when I talk about safe people, I have never like gone to any of my friends and said like, hey, I really want you to be a safe person. Here's how to do it. It's more just that like I had experiences with them that made me feel really safe and they were consistent in that. So like Cameron is one of very few people that I will drink with And he's one of literally 4 people that I will get high with because he makes those situations absurdly safe. Like the very first time I ever got drunk was in college when I was visiting Cameron. And he just was with this like group of people where like everyone had a buddy and everyone's buddy was like keeping track of their drinks like on a tally on their arm. And everybody like everyone started the night completely sober and would say to their buddy, like, I have an X drink limit or whatever. And I just thought that was so like adult of them for college students. I was like, wow, this is like a really safe situation we have going on here. Granted, like I was given hard lemonades and everybody else was like doing shots. So it's not like a whole lot could have happened to me, but it also was just the way that like we went to like some party and like Cameron left the room to help some girl that was throwing up and somebody like gave me a drink while he was gone. He was gone for like maybe 15 minutes. And so he comes back and is like, what are you drinking? And I was like, I don't know. Somebody just gave this to me. And he was like, what? And freaked out, like stopped the music and like looks around the room and he's like, I need somebody to tell me what is in her cup right now. And like one of his other friends ran over and was like, oh my gosh, I gave it to her. Like, here's what it is. Do not worry. Like it's 4 sips. Like no one's going to let her die. And he's like, her parents will kill me if she dies here. Like, and it was just like, it was like, basically what it communicated to me was that like he valued me and cared about me and made it very clear to everybody else in the room that I was important to him, and everybody was like, okay, got it, noted, like we're going overboard to make sure that like she feels comfortable here. And I think that was something that was like just repeated through like all of the time that I've known him. He just continually says to me, like, I see you, I know you, I love you. Not in those exact words, but just in the stuff that he does, like in the time that he gives me, in the conversations that we have, in the way that he like listens and remembers things that I say, like just picks up on what's important to me. And I don't think it's intentional on his part either. Like I highly doubt that Cameron has the time or the energy to sit at home and be like, time to call Samantha so that she doesn't feel unloved. Like I don't think that's a thing. I think we just like love each other, so we call each other, and that's just that. I think like another example I will give you guys is like, so on my birthday at Disney, like a woman asked me when my baby is due. And a lot of you will remember this happened to me the last time I was at Disneyland. Which is really unfortunate because it's like one of my favorite places in the world is now becoming unsafe to me, which really fucking sucks. But I told all the girls that were on the trip with me, because this happened when I was at sunrise yoga at 5:30 in the morning. So nobody was even awake yet. But I texted them in the group chat and I was like, this woman just freaking said this to me. And when they woke up and like responded to it, like pretty much all of the girls said, don't let it bother you. Don't let this ruin your day. Forget her. And that didn't make me feel better. So I texted Cameron and he responded to me and said, why can't people keep their fucking mouths shut about other people's bodies? Like, what the hell? And then he said, I'm so sorry that happened to you again. Like on your birthday at Disneyland. And the difference there is that the first response to me is dismissive. Like if somebody says, this thing just happened to me that really hurt my feelings, and you say, oh, don't let it bother you. You're essentially saying, don't let your feelings be hurt. That shouldn't have hurt your feelings. Oh, it's not a big deal. Sweep it under the rug. I don't want to deal with this. Whereas what Cameron did was he got angry with somebody for hurting his friend. And then he addressed my feelings and said, I'm so sorry that happened to you again, which is sitting in the sadness with me because he knew that I was sad. And he didn't say, don't let this ruin your day. He didn't say, forget her, because he knows I'm not going to forget her. Like, I don't know who's listening to this podcast, like if you are a man or a woman, but if you're a woman who has never been pregnant and has never desired being pregnant and no one has ever accused you of being pregnant, you probably can't relate. But if you're a woman who's never been pregnant and never wanted to be pregnant and has been asked about a non-existent pregnancy when someone legitimately believed you were pregnant, you know that it doesn't feel good. And it's not something that you forget about ever. Like, it's something that you dwell on, that replays in your head over and over and over. And for the rest of the day, you're sucking in and you're scared to eat. And you're like, why am I so fat? Like, why does this happen to me again? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, that's where your mind goes. Granted, all of the girls who were on this trip with me are absurdly skinny, and none of them has ever had this happen to them that I know of. And so they can't relate. I don't think any of them meant to offend me or make things worse by responding dismissively. I don't think that they responded dismissively. Really and truly, I think they just didn't know how to react. I think they just didn't know what to say. They're like, shit, that sucks. Like, there's nothing I can do to make that better. Honestly, that would have been a better response, in my opinion. But it's like, I don't hold it against them. Like, I wasn't mad at them for it. It's just that I didn't get what I needed from them. So I went to somebody who I knew would get me the response that I needed to help me feel better so that I could move on with my day. And again, like, I never told Cameron to respond that way, like he just does. So I think a lot of this, I honestly don't know that there is a practical answer to how to make somebody else feel seen and known. I think that active listening is probably the best I can give you. Like, I think that when somebody is talking, you need to actually listen to the words that they are saying. And if you don't understand what they're saying, or if you're feeling a way that is contrary to what you believe their character to be, like if somebody says something to you and you're feeling offended by it, and you're like, but from who I know this person to be, I don't think they would ever try to offend me, and I don't think they would say something to offend me, but they said something to offend me. So this should mean that either they don't know that they're being offensive, or I misinterpreted what they said. I need to go back to them and clarify now. I think that maybe can be helpful. I mean, sorry guys, this probably is not, like, please let me know if this is helpful, because I don't think I'm really getting anywhere with this, and I apologize because it's been like 30 minutes. I think you've got to listen to people. And I also think for anyone that goes to therapy, you're going to be familiar with this. But if you don't go to therapy regularly, or if you have never gone, something that therapists do is sit in your emotions with you. And the way that they do that is when they help you name things, first of all. So like if you're talking or you're telling a story, the therapist might stop you and say, I feel like you're really angry about that. And you'll either be like, what? No, I'm not mad about that. Or you'd be like, yes, I'm angry about that. And they'll be like, all right, let's explore that. Why are you angry about that? And they'll like dive in and get to the root of it. But the first thing is to help you identify your emotions. So for you to name your emotions out loud. And once you are able to identify and name your emotions, you go to figure out the root cause of them so that you can focus on your behaviors, because you don't have control over how you feel, but you do have control over how you act. And like next to Cameron, my therapist is the number one person I would name as somebody that makes me feel seen and heard and known, because she always names my emotions. And so that's something that's really helpful, is just to be talking and have somebody to be like, I hear that you're really sad about that. And sometimes I'll be like, yeah, but it's no big deal. And I'll like start talking about something else. And she'll be like, okay, can we go back for a second? Because I don't know that you quite, like, you agreed that you're sad about that, but you're brushing right past it. So I think we should take a second and you should process, like, that hurt your feelings. Like you're sad. And it's not comfortable to do. Therapy is not supposed to be comfortable. But even when you do this with friends, it's also not comfortable. But it does let the friend know that you see them and that you acknowledge and you validate what they are feeling. And even if you have absolutely no idea how to make them feel better or what to say, or you can't fix it, you can say, like, I see that you are distraught over losing that friend or losing that family member. I don't know what to say to make that better. Just pause there, like acknowledging that they're distraught, acknowledging that they're hurting. Like, that is going to do so much more than saying, like, oh, don't let that ruin your day. Focus on the positives. Like, because that's dismissive and it's telling them, like, not to feel what they're feeling. And then that gets confusing. My hard conversation of the week I did not have. And I debated over sharing this with you guys because I think that I said that this segment was going to be like, I'm going to have a hard conversation every week to challenge you guys to have a hard conversation every week. But as I was processing through, like, doing the intro of this episode, and I was like, you know what? I don't think a conversation is always necessary. That's why I'm telling you about one I didn't have. So, like, a couple of the girls that came on my birthday trip did not spend any time with me, like, did not go on a single ride, literally saw them twice, like, the whole weekend, for a couple of the meals. And these were the people that, like, I told you guys a couple weeks ago, like, weren't going to come to breakfast, and I was upset about it. And then they got mad at me for talking about them on the podcast. And I don't know if they were so mad that they were like, fuck her, I'm not going to see her on her birthday trip. Like, I don't know. But it was a really weird experience for me because I felt like I tried to address, well, I felt like I did address it with one of them. I tried to address it with another one, and she was like, no, I'm not having this conversation until after the trip. And I was like, okay. And then we got there, and I spent my entire birthday, like, texting them, being like, here's where we are, here's what we're doing. And it was just constant, like, we want to do something else, or just not responding. And whenever we did see them, it was like hi and bye. It was like they would, like, join us while we were watching the parade, and it was, like, busy and there wasn't time to, like, sit and talk. And then as soon as the parade was over, they were like, bye. It's just, like, running off to the, and we were like, okay. And whenever we were saying, like, come join us, I was like, we don't want to walk through that line and get to you. And so it's just kind of like, okay. And it, during the, like, it really hurt me. And it really confused me, but I was like, you know what? I just had these conversations with them about how they don't view birthdays the same way that I do. So, like, I'm not going to let this ruin my time. Like, I had an amazing time at Disney. Like, this was honestly one of my absolute favorite Disney trips that I have ever been on. It was so much fun. Like, my mom came for the first time and she loved it, which was awesome. And I think I told you guys that I only expected her to make it like a half day and then dip. But she actually made it most of the day. She made it almost a full day the first day. And then the second day she did need to rest. But then the third day she was like, I'm ready to go back to the park. Like, let's do it again. And then she made it even longer the third day than she had made it the first day. And she, like, really had fun and really loved it. And that was awesome. And then I got to see a couple of my friends that live in California that I haven't seen in years. And that was really, really exciting. And, like, shout out to my friend Nick, who made magic for us, which, like, it's such a big deal to me, because when you work at Disney, there are just fake people everywhere pretending to be your friend to get free shit. And it's so irritating. And I know that because I've worked there. So I will never, ever in my life ask a cast member for a discount. Like, I have lots of friends that still work at the parks or for the company in another capacity. My cousin works at Disney, and I would never ask them to get me in for free. I would never ask them to use their discount, because I just think that's rude. Where I am just like, if I am at Disney with you, it's because I love Disney and I love you and I want to merge those two experiences. I'm not there to use you. I'm not there to get free shit. And so I, like, told Nick that I was going because I wanted to see him, because he's my best friend. and we like was the only person that I had when I was in the Disney college program, and like I was absolutely miserable outside of Nick and Cece were like my only two friends, and like had the best time with the both of them. So it just like meant the absolute world to me that he had all these like little magic making experiences planned, and he got a day off work to like spend a day in the park with me. Like I just was not expecting that, and I was so like just blown away. He's like, I just wanted to make your birthday like special, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like freaking out. So I really just focused on that, and I was like, I'm not gonna be mad at these people that like aren't showing up in the way that I want them to. So initially, my thought was like, all right, we're not friends. Like, my mom has always said, talk is cheap. People show you who they are. And just following that, I'm like, all right, these people have showed me that they are not my friends. Whatever. Done. Not friends. And then I kind of wanted like an explanation. And then I processed it in therapy, and I like went through my therapist, and I like came up with all of these different like things for me to say and things for me to start conversations, because I was like gonna give them some time like after the trip and be like, all right, here's how I felt. How did you feel? What was your side of this? Like, I know this is totally one-sided. Like, this is what I'm thinking and feeling, what I was receiving. I don't know what you were receiving. Like, what's going on there? And honestly, just like the more time that passed, I just kind of woke up one day and was like, you know what? I don't need an explanation. I don't need the other side. Like, it's over and it's done. And I just kind of sat and have evaluated like how I have felt the past like multiple times of like having conversations. And I'm just like, I feel like I've tried, and my trying hasn't gotten us anywhere. So I'm now at a point where I'm like, if there's something that they want to talk about, I will absolutely listen. Like, I'm totally going to listen. I will take responsibility for anything else I did in addition to talking about them on the podcast again that pisses them off. Like, happy to own that, and happy to try and explain myself further, because there have been a lot of communications, but like I personally am just like, I'm not angry with them. I'm not sad about it. I don't need an explanation. I am just like letting the whole thing go. So I had planned to have some hard conversations this week, and then I was like, do I need to though? And that's also something that I find interesting. You know, they say time heals all wounds. And I agree and disagree with it, because I feel like the longer you sit on something, it can always just go away. And then kind of like I was saying earlier, is like when I get to that place of indifference, I do start to question, like, did the relationship ever matter? Like, were we ever friends? You know, like people have stories of like, you know, finding out somebody was cheating, and then it's either like they leave immediately, or they're like, no, like, let's work on it. And if they work on it, or if they sweep it under the rug and just don't speak about it for like however long, it's like it just becomes like another thing that happened to them in the past, and it's like no big deal anymore. It's kind of like I very nonchalantly tell the story today of like the last guy that I dated, and how, you know, we were together for 2.5 years before he told me that he was married with 3 children. And like when that happened, I was livid. Like I went through all the stages of grief. Like I was angry. I was depressed, like absolutely lost my mind for a while there. But now when I tell the story, I just kind of shrug, and people are like, wait, what happened to you? Like, why aren't you pissed off about this? And I'm just like, like, I don't think he's a bad guy, to be perfectly honest. Like, I'm very impressed with how long he was able to pull off the whole double life thing. Like, I think he's kind of a genius. But you know, it's one of those things that it's just like the more time that has passed since that happened, it's now just another thing that happened to me floating in the wind. And I'm just like, it doesn't matter. And in a way that makes me sad, because I remember when I felt like this person is the love of my life and I cannot live without, like I literally was like, I don't want to be in a world where you and I aren't together. Oh God, it's so embarrassing. But I kind of like being in that desperate lovesick place because it gives everything meaning. It's like being on drugs, but like I do it with love. Everyone's like, you're crazy. But yeah, it's the same thing with friends where I just feel like it makes me feel bad when I get to like that indifference place. And so like that's the thing that I'm working on with my therapist right now of like, why does indifference have to be bad? And like if the like desperate in love or infatuation or like you're my best friend, like I want to talk to you every day, like if that's just a season, why does that have to be bad? Like what's wrong with it just being a season? And like, okay, now you have that memory of that time that you had with that person and like now it's over. And that can be sad, but it doesn't have to be sad. It can just be like, shrug, it's over. That doesn't negate when it was something and when it was significant to you. Like the fact that it's not significant now does not in itself mean that it was never significant. So for what it's worth, hope that's helpful. Please write me at realhonestpod@gmail.com and let me know. If it wasn't, I'm so sorry for wasting 45 minutes of your life. My movie recommendation this week is the new Lindsay Lohan movie on Netflix, Irish Wish. This is my movie recommendation mostly because it's the only movie that I have watched in the last month, I think. I thought it was cute and stupid. Like, it's really dumb. It's really predictable. The premise is absurd. The dialogue is abysmal. But it's funny and it's cute and I loved it. I would absolutely watch it again. So do with that what you will. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, want to talk about anything, want to submit a question, send it to realhonestpod@gmail.com. Okay, bye.
I'm not here to sugarcoat life's already above you. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, you, me, and you. Let's keep it real honest.